good morning, neighbors, friends, Facebook followers. It's good to have you with us this morning. It is the 7th day of October for 2020. And let me take these reflecting goggles off, and I'll just do my best to see without them this morning. Hope the day finds you well. If you're getting up this morning anxious, don't be. Put it all aside, Take life for what it is, what it brings to you. There are times that it's understandable, that you're dealing with angst and anxiety. But if this morning it's about the weather, you're loving what it is, and you're concerned because people keep talking about this hurricane, maybe we can kind of put your mind at ease. I never say never. You just can't. If you've lived here for any period of time, you just can't say never, because these storms can be pretty unpredictable. Although, one of the things that has changed over the course of my career, over the course of the last 40 plus years, is the technology with which we now track storms. Back in the day, if they had a paper map and some isobars, and maybe, I should date myself a little bit here, but I can remember as a kid leaving Houston because Hurricane Carla was coming, and my dad watching Dan Rather on the local news channel with this big circle screen that was radar, it was green. In the middle, there was a line sweeping around, and it was just blobs. That's all, you really couldn't tell a whole lot from it. To the point where today we have thousands of satellite images. We can put it in loop. We can do water vapor. We can do all these different things to better understand the storms, and to also watch them to see and the steering currents, now better what influences them. So all that being said, so that maybe this morning we can kind of get a better idea of whether we should or shouldn't, be too concerned about this. Okay. By the way, again, I'm Dan Gresham. This is my house. Hence, it is called Dan's At-Home Update, because I'm not in the studio. I'm in my studio, I guess, but it's an art studio, not necessarily. It was never intended to be a broadcast studio. It's just where I come and escape and have a good time throwing paint at canvas. But it has become a broadcast studio, and that's okay too. But this morning, I want to get back to the subject at hand. I know a lot of you, of course, first thing on your mind. So tell me, show me what's going on. All right, so if you go to KFDM.com, we're always going to do our best to give you the latest information that affects you here in Southeast Texas. Hence, very top of the page, you see where it says new, latest track keeps Hurricane Delta to our east in south central Louisiana. Now, if you click on that, it will take you to the page, and you can go and read exactly what it says. And I tell you what, just again, to put your mind at ease, let me just read it for you. Delta has made landfall over northeastern Yucatan. That's Mexico. Weakened a bit. As of 8 a.m., the winds were 105 miles an hour. Further weakening will be likely as it moves across land. That's not unusual. A gradual turn to the north can be expected tomorrow, with landfall likely just to the east on Friday. The timing of that turn will be critical as to how close it comes to Southeast Texas. National Hurricane Center has Delta becoming a Cat 4 hurricane, but this appears to be unlikely due to the wind shear that's happening. And of course, it's moving into some much cooler waters the closer it gets to the coast. If you've been paying attention, we're not way above 80 anymore. We're at 80 or below. And locally, the meteorologists are saying if the track holds to our east, gusty north to northeast winds, 30, 40 miles an hour expected near Sabine on Friday evening. Delta would move quickly off to the west side. Rainfall totals probably less than 2 to 3 inches. And of course, notice the source. The man who has probably tracked more hurricanes from this particular location, not probably, has tracked more hurricanes than anybody certainly working today, and probably anybody who's ever tracked them with any kind of intensity. So his feel is, as you can see, the cone of uncertainty still just barely clips Southeast Texas, right? But you can see how wide that is. Almost all the spaghetti models, not all of them, but most all of them are pretty much on this central line that you see, which looks like maybe somewhere between Lafayette and Baton Rouge. But there again, the New Orleans would be on the wet side. We would be on what is called the dry side or the west side. And of course, just a little variance one way or the other can make a big difference as to how much we get and how much we get out of this. But again, pretty good confidence at this point with all the technology that Greg has at his disposal that he can go out there and say, hey, this is what I see. This is what I think it's going to do. So we'll put our stock in the man that we placed our trust in for the last 35, 40 years. But we will, because it's the smart thing to do, obviously, we will continue to watch and see what happens. But at this point, you can feel a little bit better this morning, again, knowing what the meteorologists are saying this morning. All right. So if you came in to our get together morning going, oh, I'm just not sure, don't be. I mean, again, put your mind at ease. Let the anxiety go. Exhale it all out. It'll be okay. All right, let's find out who's up with us this morning. Always like to see the community that we have created with our at-home update. Gives you the opportunity to weigh in. Amber Briscoe, good morning to you. Hi, Ebony. Marie. Reagan is up this morning. Cassandra Owens is up. Hi, Ebony. Hope you're doing well this morning. LD Brown, good morning as well. Carlene Purdue, good morning to you. Our friend Cassandra Cherry is up this morning in Honey Island. She wanted to know more about Delta, and I think I've done almost as much as I can do for you this morning, Cassandra. But again, encourage you to go and look for yourself. I put my glasses on so I can see too. Janetta Williams, you always ask, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you. Always ask how my family is, and my family is well, thank you, and I hope yours is well. Thelma McClellan is up with us this morning. June Ham says, good morning from New Orleans. June, I would be watching this storm if I were you, very closely. And I say that only because, a little deviation one direction or the other, and you guys could be getting, a lot more of this storm than we'll be getting. Jeannie Foster says, good morning, Dan. How's your day going? Hey, you know how much better my day is now than it was, say, 8 hours ago? Because, that's how you wake up thinking, okay, I've got to do all these things. Well, now I'm past that. This update, Jeannie, actually comes at the end of my workday. So I have already been to work, produced a show, anchored a show, and that. So this is the gravy part. This is the good part of the day for me when I get to talk to you and get to see what you guys are up to this morning. Marcy Wiltz, good morning to you as well. Bobby Joe, hope you're doing good. Cynthia Douglas is watching from Lake Charles. Can I tell you, Cynthia, we have not forgotten about you folks in Lake Charles. We have not. I think about you guys all the time, about what so many people over there are going through right now. And anybody who lived through Harvey or Imelda or Ike, and the list goes on, that had damage to their home knows the process and knows that a month later, it's not over. You may have cleaned up a lot of things, but a month later, it's not over. And there's a whole process of going through the anger, is a big part of it. Then you've got to deal with insurance companies and adjusters. And then if you're lucky and the adjusters are on your side, then you've got to deal with putting everything back together. And then you've got to try to find contractors. And when a storm comes through a particular city, it's almost like a boomtown to some degree. I mean, you have all kinds of people flooding into your city, and wanting to do work, but you don't know whether, can I trust these people? Can I give them my hard-earned money, or would that be a mistake? So again, my heart goes out to you folks in Lake Charles. We have not forgotten about you. In fact, we're going over to Lake Charles today. One of our reporters is headed over there this morning. So we're going to do a kind of a follow-up. Kirsten Thomas, good morning to you. Hi, Valerie. Hope you're doing well. Emily is watching in Mauriceville this morning. Joetta, thanks for getting up. Loretta, good morning to you. Great day back at you. Also, Diane Smith, Robert Long is watching from Seabrook, Texas this morning. Hi, Robert. Joanna Mayon. Sonia Matthew, Dan, you're the best around. I've watched you my entire life since I was a kid. Thank you. I always, it's an interesting thing how you take compliments from people. And I hope I've learned to do it well when somebody, but, on the same time, when somebody passes you a compliment, how you react to that and whether it's genuine or not. And the same thing is if someone is on the other side of the spectrum and they don't particularly like you, you should be just as gracious with their comment. But we can also, it's how we present our thoughts goes a long way to how they're perceived. A really good example of that I think where we've lost it to some degree in our society is when I say that, I mean that connection, that ability to really know what the other person is saying, is because we've now become so dependent on what I would call detached communication. Where instead of talking face to face, instead of you and I, and you can say, well, it's the pandemic. No, it happened a long time before there was ever a pandemic in this country. That we have reduced ourselves to text messages, emails, and I don't know about you, but I have a hard time sometimes. And even I see this with a lot of people, the dynamics are gone. You don't know what kind of tone there is when someone says something, and so it can be misread. But if we work a little bit harder to make sure that, what we're saying is understood, it can go a long way towards diffusing some situations. But thank you again for your comment. And again, I accept those who don't enjoy me or don't want to watch me, and any kind of comment they have as well. Amber, good morning to you. Diane Smith, who's having an anniversary this morning? I must have missed that one. I always like to see those. Jeannie Foster, today is mine and my husband's anniversary, 42. Well, congratulations. We don't celebrate longevity enough in this country, I don't think, whether it's longevity at work or longevity in relationships. It's kind of like, especially at work. So you stayed there that long, sucker. Loretta Jack, you must be a praying woman. I guess she's talking to someone else. Paulo Lozano, maybe the person who's been together 42 years. That's a good one. Also this morning, Cammie is with us. Byron, good morning. Thanks for stopping by for a few minutes. Dawn has stopped by as well. And remember, when you post these comments, feel free to ask a question. Tell me where you're watching from, what's happening in your life. And if you're a regular and you come with us on these rides every morning, know that this is your community too. So talk to each other. I see all these people. I love it. They're wishing Jeannie, happy anniversary. That's what it's all about. Rodney Lords, good morning, Dan. Hope all is well. And we'll be praying for the people the storm comes in contact with. Yes, and my thoughts will be with them as well. Robert Phelps, good morning to you. Hi, Glenda. Al is up with us this morning as well. All right, so again, I thank you for your time. And if you're just coming into this, I want to point you back again to KFDM.com. If you have concerns about what's happening in the weather, if you want to stay on top of it, if you're one of those people, I'm going to follow it till it makes landfall. KFDM.com is a great source of information for you. And as I said, there it is. Front and center, top story of the day, Hurricane Delta. Go and get the latest information there. Now, I also want to point you to KFDM's Facebook page where you're there right now, but even more information there. You see right there, Greg's gone even more in depth on the Facebook page where you can see these. And sometimes, and I get this, I know why he's using this, but sometimes these infrareds, to me, are a little bit misleading because when I look at them, I always think, oh, look at all those storms and raging. And that's not really the case at all necessarily. Because like I said, that's showing cloud tops as I understand it and temperatures. It's not necessarily showing rain. But still, it's a good way to see the intensity and to see where it's at. And then there is the actual track, as you can see. So Greg's there. I know that Dana has been updating it all morning as well. So you can go and get your latest information. So what else should we be talking about this morning? What other stories are a major interest to you today here in Southeast Texas? Well, we can talk about the fact that we have, I was trying to find the story real quick while I'm talking. We have one school district in Southeast Texas that has gone back to online learning. The problem being that they've just had too many COVID cases in their school. So that is, here it is right here. It's West Hardin. And, another takeaway from this, they're going to go back to online learning until October the 20th. Because of the number of cases they have. Smaller school district, it doesn't take nearly as many cases to put them in that precarious of a situation. But the other takeaway that I had from this is that idea that there are a lot of people in Southeast Texas that are put in very difficult situation when their kids have to learn from home because they don't have internet service. And you're like, well, who doesn't have internet? Everybody's got. No, it's not true. If you have it and you take it for granted, you just assume everyone has it, and that's not the case at all. Talk to some of the administrators in some of these smaller school districts, and they will tell you that this is an issue. Now, West Hardin, they actually went and handed out portable hotspots to people, that they could connect to. And then they also set up portable hotspots at some of the local churches so that they could go, and if they wanted to, they could sit at the church and they could be able to use their computers and do their studies. But not everyone has high-speed internet service, and that creates some problems. I saw a very fascinating story yesterday about a community in Pennsylvania that was up in one of the more mountainous, hilly parts of Pennsylvania. Same situation. Didn't have high-speed internet for a lot of things. For their businesses, for their daily lives, for learning. They got together and built a tower and started their own internet, ability to distribute internet because that was the only option. But here in Southeast Texas, you got a lot of folks in the deep woods. You got folks, it's just not like they don't run a cable to every house. So whether we're not thinking about that, it's an issue for some people. I just wanted to bring it to your attention this morning. Also, I want to talk a little bit real quickly about the vice presidential debate that is coming up tonight and why that might be important. It's not so much, I think that what you're going to see, and will be a very different debate than the first debate, the presidential debate that we saw. That this will be a much gentler, kinder, softer, soft-spoken, anyway, debate. Maybe wrong, but that seems to be what most people are predicting. But the other thing that's interesting about this is that you've never in the history of the United States had two people running for the highest office in the land that were as old as the two current candidates. You have a 74-year-old man and a 77-year-old man, both running for the office. And of course, they may live to be 90. But we also know that, life can be much shorter than that. So it puts a lot more emphasis, doesn't it, on who their vice president is, because that person, should they not complete their term in office, would become the president of the United States. So to me, it seems like that would be a natural thing to say, hey, maybe we should be paying more attention. So other people apparently see the same thing. This is one that's just talking about, the whole idea of the age and also the planned debate and what they're doing and how they're doing it. They're going to be 13 feet apart. They're going to have a plexiglass barrier. They're not going to let anybody in that's not wearing a mask or socially distancing. So this one will be much different. And I think you can understand why, right? Because of everything that's happened and the fallout that's gone on since. Also this morning, a rather disturbing story, USA Today. Polls warning of civil war. Violence shows deep partisan chasm over election. Bill Fry goes into it, talks about these two guys, how different they are. But both, because one's a Democrat, one's a Republican, but they both worry about the legitimacy of the upcoming election and fear the outcome that could push people to violence in the street. And they're not alone. A new poll shows a large number of Americans harbor deep reservations about the results and the consequence. A YouGov poll of almost 2,000 registered voters found nearly half, 47%, disagree with that idea that the election is likely to be fair and honest. And that slightly more than half, quote, won't generally agree on who is legitimately elected the president of the United States. So no matter what happens, the seed has already been planted, right? That no matter who wins, the other side will be able to say, not a fair election. And then the fear is we devolve or de-evolve into a very, yeah. And I saw an interesting statement. Somebody said, if you think people are angry before the election, no matter who wins, wait until after the election. If you have a thought on that this morning, would you say you find yourself in those who are concerned about no matter what the outcome of the election is, what happens afterwards and what you could see coming to this country? All right. One other story, this is a local story, but it seems to be having national impact. Texas politicians fueled criticism of Cuties, now Netflix, facing criminal charges in a small East Texas county. Did you see this? Where the district attorney in Tyler County, the grand jury there indicting Netflix for essentially child pornography, I guess. It's the grand jury indicted Netflix for promoting Cuties, about 11-year-old Singalinese immigrant who joins a dance group. And this, if you've been following this, you know that this is something that's been of great controversy. Filmmakers say that it's about pointing out these problems, but other people say, well, you didn't have to do it in such a way. But anyway, Tyler County grand jury indicted the company, not its executives, on charges of promotion of lewd visual material depicting a child, which is state jail felony. In Texas, a corporation convicted of a felony can face a fine of up to $20,000. According to the penal code. If the court further finds the company benefited financial from the crime, they can be fined twice as much, so $40,000. But if you're listening or watching and you're like, what's the district attorney's name? That's right. The district attorney's name in Tyler County is Lucas Babin, who is the son of U.S. Representative Brian Babin, who has been outspoken about this. It's very interesting, and I would encourage you to go read this story. This is the Texas Tribune story, texastribune.org. Is their suggestion, how legally binding and where did this come from? And is this really, this was not made in Texas. There are just a lot of questions, about, I don't know. I had the honor, because I think it was, but it was also an obligation of serving on a grand jury. And if you're not familiar with a grand jury, it is. I found it very weighty that you're sitting and you're listening to a presentation, and then you have to decide somebody's fate as to whether or not they'll be going to a jury trial or whether or not they're not going to have to worry about pending litigation. Based on a presentation usually from assistant district attorney. And be quite honest with you, many times it's simply a summary of the case. There's not a whole lot of detail, but yet you're making these decisions. Many times the question is asked, bill or no bill, and you're a group of people sitting there making this decision. So again, I'm not sure I get this one. I'm not sure where the grand jury, but again, that's up to the county to make that decision. I'm just putting it out there. I'm wondering if you're curious as I'm curious how this works and what's going to be happening. Okay, so again, go and read it for yourself, Texas Tribune. You can read it on the KFDM page as well. I think there's just a much better explanation of what happened and what it is. And then I want to finish up this morning just on a light note. I always like to do that. And that would be this story from Texas Monthly. Mac Davis was someone that, if you grew up in the 60s, 70s, was, I don't know, kind of a music, I'm not going to say icon, but certainly was a Texan that was appreciated for being a Texan. Lubbock born, always told people where he was from. I had the pleasure of meeting Mac Davis on a couple of occasions. He always seemed like a really down-to-earth guy. And again, when we did meet and we had conversation, as you would think if you were doing an interview, you would always ask, so tell me about growing up in Texas. And he was a guy who, despite the fact that he left Texas pretty early, and went to Nashville and Los Angeles and New York and found found a lot of success writing for people very early on, songwriting for people like Elvis Presley, that he still always talked very positively about his home state. And it was pretty obvious that he loved where he came from. He was 78 years old, died this week. And if you've never listened to his song, Texas in My Rearview Mirror, then if you have, it kind of makes you think, okay, he didn't like Texas. But if you listen to the entire song, you know that in fact, he ends it by saying, and when I die, you can bury me in Lubbock, Texas in my jeans. And you know what his family says? That, in fact, is what is going to happen. That he is going to be interred in Lubbock, and he will be dressed in his jeans. But you may not realize this, and you may have never heard of Mac Davis, but Mac Davis wrote a lot of songs for Elvis Presley. And he wrote Daddy Don't Cry, In the Ghetto, A Little Less Conversation. He kind of rewrote that. He wrote for Lou Rawls, Glenn Campbell, Kenny Rogers, Bobby Goldsboro, Dolly Parton, Ray Price, B.J. Thomas, and then, of course, had his own songs. Baby Don't Get Hooked on Me, Stop and Smell the Roses, Texas in My Rearview Mirror, Hooked on Music, so on and so forth. But anyway, I just thought it was interesting that, again, he never, ever forgot his roots. And it's so easy for people who find success, to leave it all behind. But he didn't. He never moved back to Lubbock, but he will be coming home to Lubbock for one final time. All right, so that is it for me today. I have got things to do, and I know that you do too. Let me always, as I do, remind you that there are lots of ways you can follow us. You're doing it on one of the best, I hope, Facebook page on KFDM News. You can also follow me on Twitter, Morning TV Dan, and if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel, you can. It's Dan's at Home, and we always post these updates from the KFDM Facebook page straight over to the YouTube channel so that you can watch it there as well, and you get alerts and know that they're coming. Also, the reminder, take the time today, as I always want to encourage you to do, reach out to somebody, especially in light of what's going on with the weather, because you're going to have people that are going to be out of touch. They're not as informed as you. And the reason they're not as informed is because they're not as engaged. They're not making the effort. So reach out to some of those people that you know that aren't paying attention and say, hey, listen, Greg Bostwick says we're not going to have to worry about this storm, or Greg Bostwick's feeling better about this storm. And maybe that will, as we started the day, take a little bit of that anxiety off of them as well as you. And of course, always remind you there are people out there that could just need a kind word, and you could be the person to supply it. It's not hard. Just take a couple of minutes and you can make a difference in somebody's life just by saying hi. All right, go out and make it a terrific day. Of course, remember, we'll keep you up to date on all the latest information, both on air and online. And we'll see you back bright and early tomorrow morning on KFDM and KBTV. And of course, we'll see you back here tomorrow morning with our update at home. Until then, you go out and have a terrific day.